Hi friends, just a quick note before we jump into this week's episode. In Stride is brought to you by Ride IQ. Ride IQ is a first of its kind equestrian coaching platform that will transform your independent schooling rides. Ride IQ members get access to the private mobile app with hundreds of on-demand listen while you ride audio lessons taught by top eventing, jumper, and dressage coaches. And since you like podcasts, the Ride IQ app also includes over 100 exclusive podcast episodes to keep you company during your hacks, your commute, your barn chores, or whatever it is you do while you listen. Membership is only $29.99 per month, and every membership automatically includes a 2-week unlimited access free trial. Get started by downloading the Ride IQ mobile app on iPhone or Android. On today's episode of In Stride, Sinead talks with Linda Parelli. Linda was born in Singapore to a Scottish father and a Swiss mother. She moved to Sydney, Australia with her family when she was 12 years old and got her first horse the following year. Linda's first job as a young adult was as the education director for a French skincare and beauty brand. Linda has called herself a learnaholic, and during the 12 years she held that position, she was also studying accelerated learning methods and personal development programs. Linda's return to horses came in 1989. She was in her early 30s and she had a hot thoroughbred named Regalo, who led her to sign up for a clinic with American cowboy Pat Parelli. In 1993, Linda moved from Australia to the United States, and in 1995, she and Pat got married. They traveled throughout the US and Canada giving clinics and ultimately co-founded Parelli Natural Horsemanship. Parelli Natural Horsemanship became a worldwide brand and phenomenon that paved the way for the natural horsemanship industry. After 3 decades together, Linda and Pat went their separate ways, and today Linda is co-founder of Happy Horse, Happy Life training program and the Pegasus Personal Growth program. Sinead and Linda are talking about finding inspiration and living with intention. We hope you enjoy this episode.
All right. I am so excited that we have the Linda Parelli joining us today. I have been, you know what, Linda, it's really funny because I feel like we're friends, and it took me like 2 more weeks to get the nerve up to text you a second time about coming on this podcast. we had chatted about it before, and then you were like, yeah, absolutely. And then I knew it was just my job to follow up, and I still get these like fangirl, like, should I text her now? What if she says no?
I'm so flattered.
So I am beyond happy that you made this work today, because I do know that you are a very, very, very busy lady. So you are here. You're in Ocala now all year round. Is that right?
Yes, that's right. Yep.
And where are you? And I'm over in Citrus. So where are you?
Yeah, I'm in Williston. So I'm 10 minutes from WEC and 5 minutes from the town of Williston, like just off 27. So it's a really nice location. Like I'm close to everything, but I feel quite secluded. It's nice.
Yeah. It's actually kind of nice down here because there's a few hubs. I kind of feel the same way. It's 10 minutes, 15 minutes to all the big stuff, but it's just far enough away that you're not kind of in the middle of the traffic and because it is getting kind of crazy down here.
Yeah, especially at certain times of the year.
Oh my God. Is this your first summer, or have you been here a couple of summers?
No, last summer. Last summer was my first summer, and it wasn't bad.
Yeah.
And people said, well, you just have to ride early. And I thought, oh my God, what does that mean? 5 a.m. or maybe I better move, But I found that, if we are pretty much done by 10, so if we start around 7:30 or 8 and just, are economical, and it's good because it makes you not do too much with your horses too. It's kind of short, sweet, successful, and you're out of it,
I kind of like it because, I don't know about you, but I did spend a few winters up north, and it was, like stuck in an indoor, and you're kind of, you're not getting much done. And here it's like you said, you've got to be efficient about it, but it does give you a little bit of a break. You only have 20, 30 minutes. You can't take as many walk breaks because they don't actually cool down. And then you get done and you get to go do something else for the afternoon,
Yeah, it actually worked great. And a lot of my work, looks like this anyway. So, I get more done actually in the summer.
It's nice to be in the AC. Well, I want to talk about that a little bit because, I was I was thinking, I want to talk about a lot of things. I actually wrote down about 3 pages of stuff that we could talk about, but I'll limit it for respect of your time. Because I was kind of going through, you know, all that I personally know of you and what you do. And then I started kind of looking around the internet and I'm like, oh my God, like, when do you sleep? I mean, it seems like between these new courses that you're doing and the Happy Horse, Happy Life, and, you know, helping, like, mentoring people and a skincare line. And I mean, it's just madness. Like,
crazy. It's madness.
Yeah. It is crazy. But talk a little bit. Can you tell us a little bit about the road, the Happy Horse, Happy Life? This is a fairly new venture. Am I correct?
Yeah. So it's only been 2 years. And, you know, 2 years ago, my life changed pretty dramatically because Pat and I got divorced. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I'm not the kind of person that can just sit around. It's like, oh my gosh, I still have so much to give and share, and teaching is my passion. And I called a friend of mine who I'd worked with before and said, do you want to go into business together? I want to create, you know, my own membership and my own education series. And of course, he and his wife jumped straight in, and we launched Happy Horse, Happy Life. And when he asked me, he said, what do you want to call it? It just came straight out of my mouth. I hadn't been thinking of it. I just went Happy Horse, Happy Life, because that's what I'm all about. I want, you know, my goal is to help horses and riders be happy together. And I want a happy life. You know, happy's kind of been my thing. And even though, you know, life has always got its ups and downs, your attitude to life is what you can influence. And so that's just me, you know. I try to find positivity in everything.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I've picked that up about you. Which I love, because, you know, you know, it's hard. You know, I don't want to go down a road that it's hard. I mean, we're so blessed with being able to work with horses and, you know, being able to teach and really, you know, carve out the life that we want to lead. I mean, we're very fortunate to be in a first world country and all of those things, but sometimes it feels like there's so much pressure to be good at everything and to be doing everything at one time, you know. And that's honestly, when I read all the stuff that you were doing, I thought, God, I have so many interests in a lot of the avenues that you're going down and that you're doing. And I just don't know, you know, how you do it all. I mean, how do you do it all?
Well, you know, it takes a village. It's not just me. I've got a small team, but it's a fantastic team. Mm-hmm. And, you know, obviously I could not do this by myself. And even though there's a lot of things that are generated by me, it's the people around me that help me get it done. You know, otherwise I couldn't, there's no way I could do it. And I have a lot of energy, you know, it's like, I better do something or I'm going to get into trouble. So, and, you know, my biggest problem is saying no to things, you know, because I go, oh, that sounds exciting. And oh, I'd love to do that. And why don't we do this? And why would it's like, all right, slow down, finish this thing first, then do the next thing. So it's a little bit of my sickness, you know, that I get very excited about things and I just want to do it.
You just want to do it all. So do you have a way that you like, and for all of us that kind of get these, you know, cool ideas and I want to go this way and that way, do you have a way that you kind of, I mean, do you journal a lot? Do you write things down? Do you kind of try and categorize it? How do you figure out how to do what type of energy to put where?
Wow. I don't know if I can answer that. You know, I think about my primary purpose and, you know, I want to make a difference. When I think about my core values, you know, I'm into personal growth and health and making a difference. And the fourth one is loyalty. And so anything I do has to be governed by those core values. And so if I think about making a difference, that's what my business is all about. And how do I influence riders and how do I do it all over the world? Because I've had the privilege for the last, you know, 27 years to be traveling all over the world with one of the best horsemen on the planet, seeing people and horses in all kinds of situations from all walks of life, from all disciplines, and then being able to make a difference, you know, in the way that they see horses and see their life with horses, you know. So horses are much more honored, when you can approach them from a perspective of a relationship instead of them just being a tool.
Yes.
So, I wake up inspired by that every day. Like some people say, don't you wake up in the morning and go, oh, I just want to, I'm tired. It's like, no, I wake up, it's like, let's go. I've always got like a to-do list and things to do. And I love what I do. So even if it's hard work, I'm very inspired by it. And I'm really, really lucky that way. So I would say number one is making a difference. And I'm lucky to have a business where I am doing that.
Yeah.
Then when it comes to, the personal growth and health, I see my horses fitting into that as well. I ride and train my horses to be good examples of what I teach, obviously, but they also are therapy for me.
Yeah.
And, I wouldn't say it's relaxation, but it inspires me when I ride my horses and I find that I'm thinking about things and thinking, how would I explain this very intricate concept? And what I found I had to do was put my horse riding first, because I can get so caught up in the business and making a difference and excited by teaching and writing that then at the end of the day, I'm exhausted. And it's like, I'm not going to bring my best to the barn.
Right.
And so then quite often I wouldn't ride.
Right.
And so that happened to me many years ago. This is not a recent thing, where finally I decided, I've got to put that first. I've got to put that first. And then that inspires me, that energizes me for all the things I need to do after that. So I've kept that. And the only time I don't ride my horses first is if there's some big thing that's come up or I'm away teaching. But otherwise, that's my ritual. I wake up, I do my horses, I coach my long-term students that are here. And then the rest of the day, I'm writing and doing podcasts and doing the other things, making videos or whatever.
Yeah. And can you talk about that a little bit more? Because I think that's something that, like, a lot of our listeners, I think we all need to hear it a lot, actually, is that what we bring to the barn is really important. Like, who we are when we come to the barn is very important. And a lot of our listeners, they are going there at the end of the day after they've done their real job and are going to have that therapy that we all seek, and making sure that, we really do check in with ourselves and how we are. How does that affect the horses? How does that affect our rides?
Oh, 100%. I mean, if your energy's off, your horse will feel it immediately. And, it's not like you can talk to your friend or your husband and go, listen, I need a few minutes, or, today is not the right time to do whatever. Your horse has no choice. It's like you're taking him out and you're riding and you're training and, whatever your goals are with the horse. And I think about it from the horse's point of view and I go, why would the horse want to be with me if I was not bringing my best? And, in my program and what I teach, connection is number one. And I'm not talking about connection through the reins, although it does obviously channel into that at a later stage. But there's a mental connection and an emotional connection. And when my horses see me, I want them to go, oh boy, there she is. Not like, oh God, because she's got something else on her mind, or she's on her phone and I'm chopped liver and, or if you're tense or, upset about something, then you're better off not subjecting your horse to that. And when I went through my divorce, I had days like that, where I was not in a place where I could bring the best to the barn. And I just go, funnily enough, I could go, look, I'm not in the right frame of mind to ride my horse, but I can coach. I can teach you. That would take me to a different place, whereas with my horse, I mean, that it's a mental, emotional, physical, 100% present thing. Otherwise, something's going to go wrong, because horses are such sentient beings. They feel everything, and they perceive energy way more than people do. And that's the thing that I think can affect it the most. So if I can't bring my best, I just go give my horses some treats and turn them out. But luckily, it rarely ever happens. But, sometimes there can be a business stress or something like that. Or one time, my little dog nearly got taken by a coyote, and I had so much trouble coming off adrenaline, I couldn't ride.
Really?
If I get on my horse now, I'm not going to bring my best. So I make decisions like that. Didn't get her, but, it scared me enough.
Yeah, I would hope so.
You know, my adrenaline was, and I had a lot of trouble getting that under control. It shocked me even, you know, because I'm pretty good on emotional fitness, but that was quite challenging.
Yeah. Yeah. God, no kidding.
I think we have to bring our best. I think we owe that to our horses.
Yeah. Well, it's funny when you were saying that, it just reminded me. So we have a mutual friend, Nick Riviera, and he's up in Wisconsin, but he was down here helping us with building one of our apartments in the barn. And Nick is just like a really neat person. Like, he's really nice. And I was thinking one day, I'm like, why do I like this person so much? Like, as soon as I see him, I like him. And it's because actually, whenever I walk into a room and he says hello, he genuinely looks very happy and nice to see me. You know what I'm saying? Like, he's always like, oh, hey, like he puts whatever down and says hello and like genuinely looks very like happy that I walked through the door. And it's such a nice feeling. And I thought to myself, like, I'm going to try that with Tick, you know, with my husband, because
Lovely.
I feel like, you know, we're running around the barn all the time, and half the time I'm so, you know, you're stressed out. And the one person that you don't have to do that with is your husband. Half the time you're just like, you walk in, you know, all the clients are like, hey, how's it going? And your partner, you're like, oh my God, you know? And I thought, what pressure and stress am I putting, you know, that if I could just take a second and actually say, nice to see you first before unloading all of my stuff, you know, I wonder how that would change some things around. And I think, and then I think about it with the horses as well, is that half the time we don't even notice the energy that we're carrying around or putting on someone else, you know. And like you said, horses read it so much better than people. And half the time I walk around, and if I run into somebody that's in a bad mood about something else, you know, my first reaction is, what did I do? You know, what did I do? Yeah. What did I do? Are they upset with me? And you think about that from the horse's point of view, and they don't have the verbal cues for me to say it's not you, you know, and it unleashes a whole slew of things. So, you know, it's funny. It's like just trying to be, I mean, you're with yourself so much and you know so little. You know, the horses read you so much better than you would yourself. It's just, you know, I had the little girl out here today, and we don't teach a lot of little kids. And, but I've got this one girl that's out here. She's 8 years old, and she just started coming, and she's just so, I mean, her parents like basically said, this is all she wants to do. Can she please come out here? And I said, kids should be riding with kids. They said, no, like when she gets on a horse, she is serious. And it was actually really fun teaching her, because today I asked her if she knew what intention meant, and she didn't, you know, she didn't know. And it was really fun to break it down and explain, like, your horse is actually reading the intention behind your aids, like what you're doing. The horse doesn't, you know, she's tiny, she's 2 feet, like her leg, the horse doesn't even feel the leg, you know, but it doesn't come past the saddle flap. But, you know, it's really cool to explain it to someone so young and so little. And then I'm sure you find this when you're teaching as well. The more you say it, the more you hear it, and the more you actually remember how important that is. Yeah, it's just kind of crazy how the energy is so important. And then, you know, circling back to what we were talking about a little earlier, and kind of about the pressures, all the pressures that come with daily life, you know, not just riding, but, you know, pressure of being a success, of riding well, of doing a service to your horse, being successful, whatever in the world that looks like. And, you know, trying to figure out a way to manage it in a way that it doesn't feel like so much pressure. I mean, what's your relationship with pressure? I mean, is that a good thing, a bad thing, a certain amount? Good?
It's good.
It's good.
It's good. I perform well under pressure.
Yeah. I like that.
So, yeah, it makes me really step up.
Yeah.
And, you know, for many years, I've been in a fairly high pressure environment, you know, in business especially. And even before I came to America, when I was living in Australia and I was working for a skincare company there, you know, even though I wasn't really in an ownership situation, I was a top executive. And so I was traveling, and I was part of making decisions around marketing. I was involved in, I was the education director. And so we had education-based marketing. So I was often involved in those things. And then, you know, I thought, well, that's quite a bit of pressure, you know, but then once it's your own business, oh my God, it's like, you know, you think, oh, well, I was acting like it was my own business. But when it is your own business, it's a whole different kettle of fish, you know. And
Absolutely.
so then I've done a lot of personal development over the years, especially in my 20s and 30s. And I owe so much to that, because it really helped me to think under pressure and to understand how emotions get in your way and how to stop that, you know. And that's obviously times you can't, but I'm much better than I ever was, because as a kid, I was pretty hot-headed and boisterous, you know, and bossy, my sisters tell me. And so, you know, I think it was in my DNA to be more of a leader and a driver, you know, in whatever I did. So there's a part of it that's natural, but then there's part of it that is certainly groomed, because I did a lot of very powerful seminars in my 20s. I was so lucky. And they shaped my life. They really helped shape me as a person, part of my success.
Right.
No question.
So can you talk about that at all? I know a lot of this is going to be within the programs that you have, you know, personally, but I mean, I'm really curious about some of how you think through pressure, how that pressure doesn't translate in a negative way to the horses when we're riding. Like, obviously that would be very important. Like, I'm coming at it and looking through a competition lens as well, because that is a big part of it on that final day.
And, you know, on that final day, it is what it is, right? The training's done.
Yeah.
And now it's perform. And, you know, I think of 3 stages. I think of learning, practicing, and performing. And what I find is a lot of people mix those up. Okay. That, you know, students will bring a lot of pressure on themselves into a lesson. And so instead of being in learning mode, they're in a performance mode. And it's really counterproductive, because now they're very hard on themselves. They're hard on their horses. They're hypercritical. They beat themselves up. It's like, you can't do that when you're learning. Yeah. When you go into a learning situation, you're going to go, okay, I'm going to be an idiot for the next hour. I can't tell which is my right, which is my left. I'm even things that I know, I'm not going to be able to recount them. You know, I'm going to be brain dead for an hour or however long it is. But you've just got to put yourself in that position and go, I don't care if I look stupid. I don't care if I make mistakes. And anyway, mistakes are only something when you know better. So if you know, then if you don't know, it's not a mistake. It's a learning experience. Yeah. And so I think that makes a big difference, you know, when I really help people to be better learners and look, you just be ready to be an idiot, you know, don't put pressure on yourself. It's not going to work. We're going to stay with it until you understand it, and then it's done. The good news is that learning is a one-time event. After that, you get to practice and improve it. So now in that second stage, which is practice and improving, a lot of people will still treat it like a pressure situation, and performance is pressure, but practice should not be pressure. And that's where a lot of people will blow horses up and even blow themselves up, is because they try to be perfectionists. Right. Got to get this right. This has got to be better. Pretty soon the horses go, yeah, I don't want to dance today. You know, because every time I'm with you, it's just pressure and I can't do anything right. I'm paraphrasing for the horse, but you know what I mean? They just feel picked on and criticized the whole time. And the horse never has this moment of feeling like it did right. Yeah. And so you have to be in that situation where you go, you know what? Practice is boring. You're going to work on little pieces and improve them a little bit. And you're going to repeat it, and you're going to repeat it. And you're going to repeat it maybe for the next weeks or months or years, and just make little tiny changes to it. And then all of a sudden this flower blossoms. But the harder you push in your practice, the more counterproductive it actually is. So like as an example today, I shot some videos this morning. And so I didn't have much time to ride my horse. And I went, okay, what would be the most productive thing I could do with him in our practice environment? Because I'm not teaching him anything new and I'm not performing. So it's just boring practice. And I went, you know what? I'm going to just work on self-carriage, and I'm going to do it at the walk. Then I'm going to break, and then I'll do it at the trot, and I'll give him a break. And if we still feel like we have energy, I'll do some in the canter. It was so minuscule, but the end of the session, which was only like 15 minutes long, my horse was energized, happy, relaxed, giving me everything. And you can work for an hour and not get that.
Yeah.
And tomorrow it'll be better. So by not being too critical and just playing with it and how could I improve it, you know, and not make it any big pressure thing. I think that's another way that you can just become a better learner. And I can't remember your original question now. you just become a better.
I like this winding road.
And then, of course, there's performance. And, you know, I mean, you're the queen of that. And so, you know, a lot of my students, I'm not teaching them to perform necessarily because I'm more about the behavior and the psychology. But then some of them do compete. And then some of them want to compete and they don't do any preparation for it. So how do you prepare for pressure? Oh, that was the original question. How do you prepare for pressure? You can't just go, all right, I'm ready. Bring it on. Give me pressure. You have to train for that. Emotional fitness is part of it. You've got to learn how to think in a situation where your heart rate is up. And they say that, you know, when your heart rate goes over 110, I think it is, your cognitive abilities plummet. So you have to learn how to engage your brain and be able to think if your heart rate goes over 110, whether it's for emotional or physical reasons. So, you know, in the Olympics, there's that crazy sport where these guys have to cross-country ski and their heart rate's way up, and then they have to lay down and shoot a target like a sniper, right? And so in that little amount of time, they've got to control their heart rate and control their mind and their emotions. And you have to train for that. You can't just go, oh, I think I could do that. So how do you do that? And it's by putting yourself in pressure situations and then learning how to become calm in that. Dr. Jenny and I did a series of seminars together many years ago on emotional fitness. And, you know, we would talk about the definition of what does emotional fitness mean to you? And Jenny would say, it means the ability to perform under pressure. And to me, my definition of emotional fitness is to be able to think in a right brain situation. And when I say right brain, it's emotional and, you know, there's lots going on, there's chaos, you know, things are happening to you, you feel like you can't control it. What do you do in that situation? And so by putting yourself in different situations that trigger your heart rate, trigger your emotions, and then learning how to stay calm, even if you can only do it for 10 seconds, the next time you can do it for 20 seconds, for 30 seconds. So a lot of students, because they put a lot of pressure on themselves in a learning situation when they're with an instructor, or when they're trying to play with their horse and their horse does something they didn't want, people tend to get reactive. So the horse does something and they react on it and it derails you. So instead of you being able to stay on track, you get, you know, deviated in having to react to whatever the horse did. And so I found a way to help people stop doing that. And if they found that they were in a reactive situation or they wanted to react or they were in a learning situation and they're all, you know, befuddled, that you just take this moment and you say to yourself, how interesting. So like somebody cuts you off in traffic, instead of just laying your hand on the horn, you go, how interesting. And that gives you that moment to then engage your brain instead of just having an emotional reaction. So you send your horse off to the right, you know, on the lunge, and he goes left. And instead of going, God damn it, what are you doing? You go, how interesting. I wonder why he did that. And then you just calmly bring him back and turn him around, and away you go. So that ability to not react in a negative way and be out of control, I think is key. And yet in a performance situation, you have to react positively. So how do you train that? And you do it by, first of all, mentally. Like I'm sure you ride courses mentally. And you go, if my horse at this jump did this or did that, what would I do? And the same thing, like if you're going on a trail ride, and a lot of people have never ridden through a nest of bees. Well, what if you rode through a nest of bees? Like most people just stop and start swatting bees, and now they're surrounded by them. But you have to have the presence of mind to go, run, get away from the bees, and then start swatting them. But in that moment, you're distracted and you don't think about what you need to do. So being able to mentally rehearse, like rehearse before you go into the boardroom. What are all the things that could happen? How will I handle it in that moment? What about, you know, if something goes on the internet and somebody attacks me for something? What am I going to do? You know, am I going to react, or am I going to try and see it from their perspective? And what could I have done better? Same thing with the horse. If the horse, you know, has a fit, do you just beat it up, or, you know, hey, or do you go, wow, you know, okay, I got to survive it, but now how do I keep control of that? One time a student was riding in the arena at the same time as me. I wasn't coaching her at the time, and something blew over, and she was on a young horse, and the horse ran forward and then started bucking, and she made it for the first 2 bucks, and then I saw her coming adrift, and then she fell off, and she jumped up. She's like, I'm so sorry. I'm like, so sorry to me. Like, are you okay? You know? And she said, oh, you know, he got scared and I should have been able to stay on. I said, wait a minute, let's go back and look at the situation. This was after she calmed down. And I said, the problem was that you didn't control it. You kind of were a victim and went with what the horse did instead of keeping control of it. And then the second thing was that when he bucked, you didn't buck. So if you bucked with him, you would have stayed the course, hopefully, and then been able to stop him. But instead, you got defensive and bracy, and then you were a human slingshot. You know, it's like, you're gone because you're not in harmony with what's happening, right?
Right.
And the same thing, you know, like I see people riding, and then all of a sudden their horse spooks and it runs off, you know, in one direction, and they kind of go with them, and then they pull them back. And it's like, what did you do? You wouldn't let your car do that. You wouldn't just go, oh, my car just needed to go over there. It spooked with another car. It's like, no, you keep control of that thing, even if it means stop it and keep control. Don't go with it and do nothing, or don't react and do the wrong thing. So a lot of it is mentally rehearsing for the situations you might encounter.
Run into.
You know, and then you're ahead of the game.
It's so interesting because it's like, half the time our instincts in those situations seem like we do the exact opposite thing that we should do.
We do.
Like, we crouch down in the fetal position, our hands come up, our legs come off, our brains stop thinking, you know, when in all honesty, like if you did the exact opposite, it would be the right, most of the time, the right answer. If you think you need to do something fast, you should probably do it twice as slow. You know, it's just counterproductive. And then there's some people that you watch that it just is like they're born that way. You know, their instincts and their reactions seem so cool. But I often think though too that those, you know, and you're one of them. I've watched you work with a lot of horses, and I quote you all the time in a lot of my clinics and lessons, and because I remember you teaching someone and they were just meant to walk up to the horse calmly and they were kind of creeping along, and you're like, don't be weird, stop being weird, you know? And it's so funny because you're like, I'm going to do this thing, really walk slowly up to this horse, and you're like, you look so weird right now, that horse is just thinking you're so strange, you know? And but how you can move gracefully and at a pace that seems normal, you know, or when a horse is, like you said, being incredibly reactive, having that pause and that thoughtful moment to carry on with what the task was. And normally that thing goes away.
How can you stay centered? Like, how can you stay with, you know, your idea, what you want to have happen, the picture of what you want to have happen. And if somebody messes with your picture, you can just go, we'll just put it back here. And, you know, the sooner you see it, and I think about it like a potter's wheel. Have you ever thrown clay on a wheel and tried to make a pot? All right. So everything's going great. You're like, ah, and then it gets this little bump, right? Ah, boom, boom, and then the whole thing is just like scattered. So what you do is you learn to feel like, if you watch people who are really skilled at it, they learn to feel for when a bump's about to happen. A little unbalance is about to happen. And that's where you get to fix it. And then nobody ever sees the clay fly off the wheel. It never goes there. Same thing with horses. And I think knowledge is part of it, but experience is a big piece of it. Because you know what's about to happen, what could happen. And you see the tiniest little sign, and then that's where you fix it, like that little bulge on the pottery wheel. And then it just goes along seamlessly. But if you let that bulge get big, and the next thing, horse is in the air, he's rearing, he's bucking, it's, you know, and the little things is what you needed to be able to identify. And then that's how you can fix it, because then you can keep it on track, keep the clay in the middle of the wheel.
I know. I guess I'm visualizing Ghost, you know, the movie. You're just doing this pot, and all of a sudden there's a ghost behind you massaging your shoulders, which it feels like sometimes. Like, why did I do that? When you come across someone, when you come across a student who in theory, like conceptually knows this is the way that this should work, but because of maybe a trauma, a fall, a situation, that there's reactions and patterns that have grooved pretty deeply, that it's just it's a reaction, it's not a thought. How do you get through that? How would you say, and I mean, I certainly have things that I do, like small tells, you know, when I get a little nervous, my coach will know right away. You know, the common person might not, but he'll know. He's like, you're anxious, you're thinking too much, you're trying too hard, your hands have come up a half of an inch, you know. How do you work through that when you know it's a trauma response, when you know there's a real pattern there?
I've done a lot with that in terms of NLP. I don't know if you're familiar with neuro-linguistic programming.
No.
And it's how your brain operates and how you communicate with your brain and what you believe. Because, you know, belief is just a thought you keep thinking. And so, you know, you've got to learn how to control your thoughts and control your brain. So NLP is amazing. And I was introduced to it in my 20s, and I'm by no means an expert, but there were a few seminars that I did that really helped me to understand what happens with our brain when we get into a fear pattern. And I did this mainly with, you know, in teaching situations with people who just had a lack of confidence with, this is not riding teaching situations, but I used to teach public speaking, you know, when I was training my team at the skincare company that I worked for. I had to train presenters. And of course, most people are scared of public speaking more than death, right? That's the story.
Right.
And so how do you get people over that fear? And it's not really based on reality, because some of them had never done it. And so then when I started with horses, I saw that it was exactly the same kind of thing, that it's retreat and reapproach. So it's the opposite of what we want to do. When we feel scared about something, let's say take horses, for example, people, you know, tell you, just get on, don't show the horse that you're scared, and just come on, be brave, just work through it. Well, you can't do it. You know, the horse knows you're scared, your brain knows you're scared, and it will get to a point where your brain goes, you cannot be trusted. I've told you, you don't have the goods for this, mentally, emotionally, or physically, yet you're pushing through it. And all of a sudden, the fear will escalate. One day, people go, all of a sudden, I couldn't get on my horse. And they'd been pushing through that fear instead of fixing it. So there's, you know, several ways to fix it. But the easiest one, and it sounds so ridiculous, is when you feel afraid to stop. Stop, back up a little bit, back off. Wait till the butterflies come down, and then reapproach it. So I'll tell you a story. Sorry, can you hear my dog snoring? She's on my lap, and she's like, I can hear her going. So there was a student that I had in a course. She was in a 2-week course with me, and there was about 20 students in the class. And on the first day that we were going to ride, which was about 2 days into the class, she said, I have a confession to make. I'm terrified. of riding. And I talked about it a little bit in the class because it's like the dirty little secret. If people are afraid around horses, especially, they don't want to confess it. And they'll push through it. They don't want anybody to know. The horse knows things don't go well because your energy's off. But most people won't confess it because they feel like they're wrong, that there's something wrong with them. They shouldn't be scared. I have no right to be scared. So I talk about it, you know, when I'm teaching riding, and basically I'll tell a story now. So I said, okay, well then you're not going to ride. You come and sit with me in the golf cart while I'm coaching everybody else. And so then I talked to her and I said, now I want you to imagine yourself riding and tell me, you know, like when your butterflies start. So is it when you wake up and think about it and you're still in bed? Does it happen when you're brushing your teeth? Does it happen when you're in the car driving to your horse or walking to your horse? Does it happen when you get your horse? Does it happen when you put your foot in the, like, when does it happen? And she said it happened when she would think about it. So in the morning, if she thought about riding a horse, she'd feel sick before she even got out of bed. Yeah, it was pretty extreme.
Yeah.
So I said, okay, so you woke up, you thought about riding, you feel sick, you've got butterflies going crazy. And now I want you to retreat from that and go, well, I'm going back to sleep in my little happy place. Then I'm going to wake up and I'm going to think it again. And you just keep winding back and then, you know, going forward and then rewinding it. But every time you hit the butterflies, you go backwards and you start from scratch again. And then pretty soon you just start from 1 or 2 steps back. But it might take you 40 steps to get to where you can sit on your horse without butterflies. It might take you 10. It might be more, it might be less. But what you have to do is honor that threshold every time you feel it. So I said to her, so we're going to walk you through all of that. And I said, and you're going to do it in your head. I don't need to talk to you, but you're sitting here in the golf cart with me. And I said, and you're going to go get your horse. Now, that might not happen today. It might not happen at all during this course, but you're going to run this process every time. It took her 40 minutes to get out of the golf cart. And she would go to get up and then she'd feel the butterflies. She'd stop. She'd rework her process. And I just, you know, didn't do anything, gave her no pressure. She went and actually got her horse, saddled it, and stood on the mounting block and petted it. And that was as far as she got the first day. Second day, she got all the way through it. Third day, she's riding. She's in the forest. And what had happened, a deer had jumped out of the woods and scared her horse. And so it spooked violently and she fell off and then she was terrified. And so she was very afraid of riding in the woods. And so we had woods on the property where you could go out of the woods and into the woods and out of the woods and into the woods. And on day 4, she was riding in the woods.
Really?
And, and I make them promise, like, I'm not going to look at you and go, are you okay? Because you have to learn to teach your brain that it can trust you.
Right.
If you need someone else telling you you're okay or asking if you're okay, you're not in control of yourself. And you have the strategy now to retreat and reapproach. And retreat and reapproach. And it's unbelievably powerful. And you can see it in horses. I mean, horses that are terrified of going into water or on tarp or a trailer or whatever, you just retreat and reapproach. And pretty soon the horse goes, I can do it. Same thing happens with the human brain. But we humans are the worst. We're our worst self-critic. We say things to ourselves we would never say to anybody else. And they're the things we have to stop. We have to get control of that. To you know, be kinder to ourselves, and more respectful to ourselves. And you know, this takes work. It doesn't just happen to you. You know, like I said, I did a lot of courses in my 20s to learn how to control my brain and my emotions, and not become a robot. You know, emotionally fit doesn't mean that you're a cold stone and you don't feel any emotions. You do, but you're not dysfunctional. You know, if something happens, you can work your way through it instead of, like, you know, collapsing into a puddle of nothing, you know.
Who knows what?
Yeah.
So I think it was maybe Jonathan Field that said it. That he said that you're as confident as your self-talk, as your inner voice. Like whatever that voice is saying is your confidence level. You know. And
you cannot fake it. You know, people say fake it till you make it. You can't do that with a horse.
Right.
And expect it to go well. Like somewhere, somehow, you're going to be on this plain up here instead of right where your horse is.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you need to stay connected, you need to stay present, and you know the horse depends on that. And I don't carry my cell phone when I ride, and you know, I teach my students not to do that. It's like if you're out to dinner with somebody, it's like if we're on the podcast and I'm like on my it's like, who's important here?
Right,
you know, this has got to be the most important thing. It's like there's nothing else more important than you right now. Right. There's nothing more important than my horse right now, or my student right now, or the article that I'm working on. And that's a big self-realization that I had in some of the training that I did in my 20s, was that I was all into, you know, there's 50 things going in my head at any one time, and learning how to make one thing really important was a struggle for me. But I'm honed on that now. You know, I really have worked on that.
Yeah. And do you do anything other than, you know, like any practice? Have you ever done any meditation or anything like that? Do you practice any of those routes, or is that not really on your radar?
Oh, it's totally on my radar. I really fuel my brain. You know, I'm constantly working on myself. Like I said, one of my core values is personal growth.
Right.
So how can I be better? You know, some way better every day, mentally, emotionally, or physically. And I listen to a lot of podcasts and personal growth things, and I educate myself in, you know, various things, not just horsemanship. And so I'm always kind of grooming my brain. And then I also know, like, you know how you hit a wall? Well, I've learned to see the wall coming. So if I see the wall coming, I go, I'm going to watch a movie, or I'm going to go cook, or I'm going to do something that just, you know, makes me be really present in another way that I don't, you know, that it's not demanding.
Right.
But yeah, I do. And I'm, you know, there's different forms of meditation, I guess. And my meditation is listening to my podcast in the morning, you know.
Yeah.
And I have that time that, you know, is around about, you know, 5 or 6 in the morning. And I spend anywhere from 30 to 60 minutes and I'm listening to something.
Oh, really? That's interesting.
And I've done a lot of meditations also with Dr. Joe Dispenza. He's incredible. And that certainly helped me, you know, when I was going through a difficult time in my life a couple of years ago. And that was incredible. You know, you can't do that by yourself. I don't know that you can. And there's so many brilliant people out there that you can tap into. And so, yeah, I do
a bit of that. It's so interesting. It's like, I love listening to you talk about all this, because it's, it feels like it's hard to get to the road of self-growth without feeling like something is like you're trying to fix something, but it's not. It's just, you're just always trying to,
it's training.
I was having this conversation with Tick the other day, because, you know, I was having one of those moments. I had just gotten hurt, and I had only been back in the tack from having a baby for, you know, a short period of time. And so I was like ready to go. And of course I was going far too fast, too much, you know, just in a hurry, and got myself hurt. And then, you know, I had this, I'm on the way to the hospital. Right. And I'm thinking, what am I doing? What am I doing? Like, what am I doing? You know? And the EMT guys are like, nothing. You're just lying there. I'm like, no, that's not what I mean.
I'm talking to myself.
You know, and I said to Tick when we got to the hospital, I was like, what do we do? Like, am I not supposed to be doing this? You know, you have all of these thoughts that come and go. And I was trying to think of, well, should I be doing something else? But I just love what I do. Right. And then I thought, oh, shit, maybe I'm just addicted to this. Maybe it's like a drug. Maybe I don't even like this, you know? And maybe at that point I was on some oxy or something, but, you know, and Tick's like, oh, here she goes. And, but that conversation was a really one that happened over the next few weeks. Honestly, we just kept kind of revisiting in less emotionally charged moments, right? And what we really came around to from a competitive point of view was that we just, neither of us, you know, the thing that was keeping us in was that we didn't feel like we had reached our full potential, or even part of it, you know, like we just feel like there's so much room for it. And it's funny that you're saying growth is personal growth. We just felt like there's still so much room for personal growth, and that actually may be a bit of the addiction or the craving of the learning or something that way. But it was it was a big, I'm still in the shift because I've always been very, you know, like when I got back on, and I think this might have been the learn behind the fall, if you know what I'm saying, that when I got back in the tack after Violet was born, I was like, okay, I'm going to the 3-star in the fall. These horses are going to be shortlisted for the Pan Ams in the spring. Paris is in the, you know, and I'm like, let's go. And then down we went, you know. And I, you know, and then it's interesting though to try and figure out that, and I think at our farm, we have this discussion a lot. And I know we've had this discussion before because we're a competitive farm, but we also are so interested in the horse first and the relationship. And, and it's a fine line sometimes. I'm not going to lie. I struggled back and forth. I'm on both sides of it quite often, trying to figure out where the priority lies when, you know, there is pressure of competition and we've got to make these goals over here, but then something doesn't feel right. You know, there's a moment that doesn't feel right in the training, or there's a day that doesn't feel right that you can't push through. And trying to change the shift from maybe so in pen on the calendar to more the let's see where the growth side of it goes. And then hopefully that filters into the competitive side of things. I mean, I don't know. I'd love to hear some of your thoughts on, you know, because obviously you've got students that compete and you've been around, you know, multitudes of different Olympians in different disciplines and ride with them often yourself. And, you know, where do you see that line, or is it constantly moving as far as kind of the competitive world, the natural horsemanship world, because those two don't always feel like they're together?
Yeah.
That might be a big question for an hour into our talk.
Yeah, it is. It's like, how do I make this? Okay. So with natural horsemanship, you know, that kind of took on a life of its own that became a little different from what Pat and I originally, you know, started it to be. So then it, you know, became all about rope wiggling and rope reins. And people then went, well, you know, we don't believe in shoes and, you know, we don't believe in bits and, you know, we don't shave our armpits. And, you know, it's like, wait a minute, you know, that's not what it's about. It's about, you know, what's natural for the horse, you know, in terms of how do horses think and how do you appeal to their nature, not how can I keep a horse in captivity as if it's a Mustang. You know, you can't. And horses are very adaptable. So, you know, it's really about the psychology and the nature of horses and how can you get a horse to love what we want to do. How do you do that? And, you know, dressage is my sport of choice. And so the way that I think about it is like, why would my horse want to go into an empty arena that it can't see what the hell we're doing? And yet I'm putting a lot of pressure on it to do a better trot, you know, or to do a flying changer here, you know. Why should the horse love that? So I've thought about that, I mean, to death, as you can imagine.
Yes, for sure.
I really think about it because, you know, philosophically, it's a big question. And so I have an answer for it.
Yes, because I'm so excited.
Kind of the answer. But I thought, why would my horse want to do this? And I actually had a student say, and he's an international jumper in Italy, Luca Moneta. And he said, Linda, I don't think my horses really like jumping. And I said, okay. And he said, I think they just jump because they love me. And I went, and? I'm like, is that a problem? And he goes, well, I want my horses to love jumping. And I said, no, you don't, because they won't stay in your pastures. I have one of those. I have a horse like that. You can't keep him in anything. He loves jumping, you know. So, but I said, if they love jumping with you, that's the key. And so then that's how I think of it in dressage. I go, why would my horse want to do this? And it's because my horse loves to dance with me, loves to be in harmony with me. He feels bigger, better, more successful, more positive, more athletic, more, you know, whatever it is. And he has a great time with it because he gets to offer and contribute instead of just being made to do it, to be obedient. And, you know, there's all this psychology that I've put into it going, how can I get my horse to go, just tell me when and I'll do a flying change. Just tell me when. I'm ready. Just tell me when and I'll do passage. Just tell me when. Yeah. So that's the state, you know, that I keep working towards and not practicing those things every day. I'm practicing getting my horse into that frame of mind. So then it's there when I want to perform it. And so I practice performing about 1 day in 5. So every 4th day, I'll, you know, do some fairly high pressure things and do it. I don't actually write a test, but I do it like, okay, now I'm performing. And performing is not when you're learning and it's not when you're practicing. It's like, put it on the table, what you got. I'm going to go out and I'm going to do these things. I'm not going to try and fix it as I go. And at the end, I'm going to judge it. I'm going to go, well, that was crap. And then I'll go back and go, what do I have to improve? Yeah. Or you go, whoa, that was really cool. And then you celebrate it. But most people, again, going back to that learning, practicing, performing, they can't separate it. So even when they're performing, they're training the horse or they're teaching it something new or they're correcting it. And then horses go, oh, you know, why aren't we dancing? Now the two of us have to bring it with everything that we've learned. So first of all, I think, you know, for horses, having that opportunity to find harmony is huge. And we have to learn to stop picking on them. We have to learn how to let them know they're right. Yeah. You know, how does the horse know when he's right? Yeah. Like I often have students who are really good on the ground and they release to the horse. They give the horse comfort. They give it that chance to know it's doing the right thing. Then they get on and they're constantly pushing with their leg and pushing with their seat, and holding on. It's like, when does your horse know he's right? There's never been any peace in there. So I think that's a huge part of it is that, you know, how can your horse find joy in it?
Right.
What is going to float his boat about doing this? And even when there's pressure at the end of it, the horse goes, yeah, you know, that was awesome. We did it together. Yeah. And you have to teach horses how to respond to pressure, just as we were talking about, you know, pressure situations for us as human beings. I trained for that. Right. I trained to go out and talk to 10,000 people, you know, and perform with my horse. You can't just show up and do it. You've got to, you know, what if something went wrong? What if, you know, all my accidents would happen in front of 10,000 people, you know? Yeah. So it's like, you know, you got to be ready for that. And then how do you manage yourself? And how do you manage the crowd? And how do you manage your horse? And that doesn't come naturally. You've got to train. Right. So with a horse, like I've got a horse that's very introverted, Jazz. He's a very emotional horse. It's been a huge journey for me because I looked at him and said, I want you to be my Grand Prix tiger. And he's like, I just want to be this little shrinking violet and don't anybody look at me or ask me anything. And so I realized at one point I have to teach him to enjoy pressure. What's that going to take? Where when I pick up the reins and say, and now I want power, he goes, yeah. Whereas before it was like, please don't pick up the reins, you know? So there's a way to teach horses that. And you've got to, it's like emotional fitness. You've got to expand that bubble. And then the other part I want to share is from a dear friend of mine, Luis Lucio, who's a 2-time Olympic dressage rider on the Spanish team. He was the trainer's delegate for the dressage committee, the FEI committee. He was the team director for Spain for many years, young riders, talent, scout, director. I mean, he's like all the credentials you can imagine. And he would do team selections and things like that. And he said, do you know what the number one thing we have to tell the team when they're selected is that between now and the Olympics, all you have to do is keep your horse sound. Don't go and practice and try to make things better. You're already qualified. Work on the relationship and keep your horse sound. Because he said often what would happen is people would, you know, now they're selected. They're like, oh, I got to really train for the Olympics now. And then they put more pressure on their horse, more pressure on themselves. And if they get there, you know, it's a harrowing experience rather than a celebration.
Yeah.
Because, you know, they've put themselves under so much pressure, they're stressed, and, you know, their horse may or may not be lame. So he said that's the biggest thing that they have to help their team with, and that they believe very strongly in sports psychology to help people get through that part. And with horse psychology, it's the same thing. How do you get the horse to go, can't wait to get in that arena and perform, instead of you need two people to get it down the chute into the, you know, into the competition arena, because the horse doesn't want to go in there. That's not a good way to start, right?
100%. I mean, that's a lucky team, honestly, to have somebody to tell them that, because there's a lot of teams that they would say the total opposite, you know, like, okay, now that we've got our team, now we have to work on how do we get the gold medal? You know, how do we do that? Let's wind it up. Exactly. And just like anything, there are certain horses that can handle it and certain people, but most can't, you know?
Yeah. I asked him, you know, because he was part of getting the Spanish team up to, I think they were 5th in one of the Olympics, because they were barely on the radar, and most of them ride Spanish horses, and those are often not competitive with warm bloods. And under his direction, they, you know, reached a highly credible point, you know, in Olympics and in international competitions. And he said that sports psychology was a big piece of it. Horse psychology, he said he wished he could have done more, but people thought he was a little woo-woo, so he had to be careful talking about it, because, you know, he does what I do. And and then the other part was that he always had them perform in front of international judges. So even in Spanish national competitions, they would bring international judges in, because he said then you'd get a taste of the real world, instead of going, oh, well, we were fine at home, but now we're on the, you know, in the big world, oh, you know, suddenly it's much tougher. So his understanding of psychology is like pretty deep, and he said it made a huge difference for the team.
That's so interesting, because I think that a lot with the American team, and, you know, it's kind of like once you start seeing things a certain way, it's hard to unsee that. And especially like in eventing, it's such a, well, with all equestrian sports, but I do feel like in eventing, the relationship is so paramount from a safety point of view, you know, being on the exact same page, you know, you need to be on the same page. And, you know, and I often think like, God, if we could just get some more of the horse psychology behind it and the sports psychology behind it. But I don't know if it would, like, I can understand how it wouldn't be totally well received all the time. You know, there's a lot of people, the old school thinking is to be received. So I don't know. It's hard. It's kind of,
well, you know, there's
slowly,
that old,
I guess it's coming around.
There's that old question. It's like, how many missionaries does it take to change a light bulb? One, but the light has got to want to change, right?
Yeah.
Right. People got to want to do it. You cannot make them do it. You know, there's a point at which some people will start to care about their horse in a different way. And often, you know, 9 times out of 10, it's people who've got this 1 in a million horse. And normally they would have given up on it, sold it down the road. And they go, I don't want to give up on this horse. It's so special. I need to think outside of the box. I need to do something different.
Yeah.
And then the light bulb wants to change.
Completely. Well, and I think things, I had this, one of the first podcasts we did was with David O'Connor, and I kind of brought that up a little bit. And I was kind of a little frustrated with some things I was seeing in the sport. And he actually, who, you know, David, well, he's like, I call him Eeyore, like he's not always like the most positive dude. And, and he said to me, Sinead, it's changing. He's like, look at the people that are winning, like pay attention to those, stop looking at the other ones, you know, like, but it is people, you know, there's an incredible amount of horsemanship that is coming into the disciplines, and they're winning, you know, so maybe people aren't talking about it as much as they should at that level. Maybe they're just naturally like that, or have found that way and don't put it in a category. But it is, the whole world's kind of moving that way.
It is definitely moving. You know, 30 years ago when, you know, we started talking natural horsemanship and, you know, seeing things from the horse's point of view and all that kind of thing, it was like, you know, they're going to burn us at the stake, like we're witches and warlocks. And you're like, what? voodoo, it's a cult, you know, we're like, oh, what is all of this, you know? And it was really hard yards for a long time. And then it just started to infiltrate, and people would go, you know what, my grandpa used to be more like that, or my dad was like that, or I had this trainer or this old horse guy. It was always this old horse guy, you know, or some woman or girl that just had this way with horses, but they didn't know how to explain it, you know, or how to duplicate it. But natural horsemanship has certainly, you know, put its tendrils into lots of different areas. And I think I know that that's made an impact. It's influenced a lot of young riders who are, you know, maybe not formally, but informally, they've had pieces of it and they think differently. They're exposed to different ways of thinking, and it's coming into, you know, all the brilliant parts of the sport. So it's, you know, the two things are melding. And unfortunately, I also think that the animal rights movement, I shouldn't say unfortunately, but you know, that's been pretty strong in a lot of areas. And I think that's forced people to change, that they can't, you know, be, certainly in public, they can't mistreat horses. And, you know, if they do it in private, it's going to come out somewhere. Well, so I think overall, you know, it's like Gandhi, that beautiful Gandhi quote, you know, you can tell the evolution of a nation by the way it treats its animals. You know, because now there's more respect for those animals. Then we don't use them for work. They're for our sport and pleasure. And some of us feel like, well, how can we give that horse a great life at the same time?
No, so true. And it's funny. I'm sure you find this as well. I was just in New York teaching, and we taught at this great place, and the arena is really cool because it has like half of the arena is a bank. So it's got a couple different levels of the bank. So, and that was the only cross country they had. Yeah. But it was, because it was awesome. So we got to come in and out of it. And a couple of the horses had issues. And when you were back talking about approach and retreat, you know, that's really in the last little while, Tick and I have definitely changed our cross country style and teaching horses with banks and drops to approach and retreat. And I'm sure we get the same reaction a lot that I'm sure you guys got when you started the horsemanship stuff. You know, the horse is about to jump off the bank, but you can tell it's scared, and I'm telling you to turn around. You know, and people are going, right. But if I hit him, and if I hit him, he's going to go. He'll definitely go. And I'm like, but you know, you don't want it to go that way. But what I've seen more than not recently is the relief on people's faces when they feel like there's another systematic way, you know, that, you know, thanks to you and thanks to, you know, a handful of people out there, there's started to become words associated with it in a system that you can teach something that somebody can hang on to that doesn't just have this mystical, magical feel. You know, it is very tangible, and you can teach it. And that's what it was really interesting, because this was probably one of the first clinics that I really saw just of these ladies that didn't want to beat the horse. You know, they didn't want to do all that other stuff, but they felt like they had to, you know, they had to push through it.
That was the only way.
Yeah. And and I'll be honest, it takes a lot for me. There were moments this time where I could see the horse was about to go. And actually, if they did just give a little pop, it would have. And it took everything in my soul to say, turn around. You know, I said it to Tick. Because like, I just believe in my process so much. And I'm like, I believe most of the time.
That's awesome.
You know, we needed a little pep talk, but I did stick with it, you know, and it's just, you know, it's so ingrained from what we've been taught, but I know I'm relieved to do it that way. So
I think that's where things, they have really changed, because, you know, I mean, this is military riding, right? That's where it stems from. And in the military, obedience is everything. I mean, whether it's horses or humans, is like, yes, sir, yes, ma'am, right now, no argument. I mean, because you have to do that or you're going to die in war, right? So if you're fighting on horseback, your horse better do everything that you said right now, right here. Even if you're scared, I don't care. You listen to me. We're doing it. But we don't live in those times anymore. We want, you know, a happy horse. We want a relationship. We don't want to die in battle. You know, we don't want to die in the dressage arena.
Yeah, yeah.
So, which, you know, people do, because they're riding horses that are out of control, mentally, emotionally, physically. You know, they're freaked out, they're not confident. So to me, this is the science of confidence. And, you know, a confident horse is a happy horse. A confident person is a happy person. And a confident horse and rider, you know, are a safe horse and rider. At least, you know, safe
and competitive, and you know, like that. Yeah, that is actually, you know, that I think is the final piece. Yeah, that needs to shine through.
Yeah.
Well, I've had you on the phone for 1 hour and 15 minutes already.
It's been fun.
I know. I could go for a lot longer, but I want to get to these questions, because I'm sure we'll dabble around here for a little bit, and that way I'll get you.
I think we might have actually covered a lot of it, because you gave me the questions to look at.
There were a few things that I definitely I thought we'll just touch back on it. Cool. All right. So what is the biggest lesson a horse has taught you about yourself?
Be 100% present. Because every time I've not every time, but when I've not been is when I've had accidents, or I've had something not good happen. And I learned that in a big way, performing in front of big crowds, you know, at expos or at the events, you know, the Parelli events that we used to do. And, you know, it'd be thousands of people, and I'd be with my horse. And the only times that something would go wrong was when I thought more about the audience than my horse. So, you know, I was so passionate about getting people to, you know, to like this or to understand it. And then my horse is like, where am I? You know,
what am I?
And I'm sitting on him bareback and bridleless. It's like, I'd better be present, you know. And so something would go wrong. And it was because I was not present for my horse. So when I'm 100% present with my horse, then everything goes great. And then I can include, you know, whether it's an audience or whatever, but learning how to be 100% present, horses have taught me more than anything else about that. And it just becomes part of life. I'm like that with people. And, you know, in situations, I try to be 100% present, not in my head somewhere else in the future or any anxiety of the past. It's like right here, right now.
Yeah. Yeah. It's probably the most healthy place to be. That's for sure. Yeah. Do you have a favorite training or competition mantra you reference regularly?
Yes, I do. My students will tell you I say this a lot: enjoy it or fix it. So, so I see people somewhere in between. They're not enjoying it and they're not fixing it. And I always look at people's faces, you know, like if things are going well, they've got a pleasant look on their face. If it's not going well, and I use emojis a lot when I'm teaching, you know, like writing. And when they're kind of like, doesn't look good, or, you know, it's easier to see the ones where they're really unhappy. And I can tell they're not happy, but they're not changing it either. So I say, you know, are you happy with that? And they go, yeah. And I say, well, then enjoy it. Show your horse that you're enjoying it, you know, enjoy that moment or that time. Don't just go, well, in a minute, it's going to be crap, you know. So enjoy it. And then if you're not enjoying it, then what do you got to do to fix it so you both can enjoy it? Because if you're not enjoying it, your horse isn't. Enjoy it or fix it.
I love it. I think in your clothing line, you should do like a whole, just like a t-shirt, like t-shirts with your little sayings on them. Like I was already thinking you should have one. Isn't that interesting?
Yes,
that should be on there. And enjoy it or fix it. I definitely buy that one as well.
There are plans. There is actually a t-shirt with that on it.
There is. There we go.
Yeah, they had me come do a clinic and they printed t-shirts that said enjoy it or fix it.
I love it. I love it. I know. I always laugh here because I tell people to just be normal. I'm like, just ride down to that fence and just be normal. So that's going to be our t-shirt here. Don't be weird.
That's it.
Is there a piece of advice someone gave you along the way that you still reference today?
Yes, there's many, many of them, because I've really had the fortune to be around some very wise people, great masters, and very philosophical people, you know, whether it's in horses or outside of horses. But I'm going to quote Walter Zettel: give, give, give. That's it.
I love it.
And I remember asking him one time, Walter Zettel is a wonderful master who's no longer with us. And I was lucky to study with him for 12 years. And I would sit, I'd have my lesson, and then I'd sit next to him. And I'd be watching, what he's coaching people and trying to figure out why he said this, what happened that made him, give that direction. And he says, give. He would say, give a lot. Give. Mm-hmm. Give the right. Give the left. And one day I said to him, so I can't tell when you're saying give, why you're saying give. I said, I can't tell if the horse did something wrong or if he did something right. He said, both. You give. But we want to do the opposite. If he's right, we want to do more. And if he's wrong, we want to smack him. I'm like, no, just give.
I mean, if that's not a light bulb moment, you're like, that's all there is to know. The end. I've learned the internet. I love it.
Give, because we don't give. We do the opposite. And when we give is when the horse gets calmer.
Right. Oh, that's so funny. I love it. What do you do when you are seeking inspiration?
I'm surrounded by inspiration. So I don't know that I go seek it. I'm just in it all the time.
Yeah.
I'm inspired by my horses. I'm inspired by my students. I'm inspired by the podcasts. I'm inspired to cook. When I work, I can't work in silence because I hear every little cheep, beep, I'll get distracted. And so I need some kind of white noise. So I'm famous for having cooking shows on the TV. And I just have these cooking shows going while I write. And every now and then I'll go, oh, that's a good recipe. So then that inspires me. And I'm also very lucky to be around some, successful people in all walks of life that are extraordinary human beings. I mean, I don't get to spend much time with you. I've spent a little more time with Tick. But, people like that you have around you are constantly inspiring. And, if you want to soar with eagles, don't fly with turkeys. And so I'm very careful about who is in my vortex. I surround myself with positive people, passionate people. It doesn't matter what level. They could be novice riders, but they're passionate about what they do. Or people who are passionate about business or very skilled in different things. So that's just my world.
Yeah.
So I'm very fortunate. I've created that world and I protect it, and that's the world I live in. So I rarely find myself in a place where I go, I need some inspiration. I'm overwhelmed by inspiration.
Yeah.
I just need to see that wall coming.
Yeah. Some wall. That's a whole other podcast. All right. Our last question. Have you had an experience or an adversity separate from horses that you feel like has influenced you as a horsewoman?
Yes. I had an experience with a great teacher. His name is Robert Kiyosaki. I think I mentioned him earlier. Did I? No, I didn't. But Robert Kiyosaki, he used to run seminars in Australia. And he's from Hawaii, he's American. And this is back in the 80s. And there was a course that I did with him called Powerful Presentations. And he was very big on teaching personal growth seminars. And this is like in the 70s and 80s, that was personal growth seminar time. And so I was lucky to be growing up in that time and exposed to all these amazing people like Zig Ziglar and, that really helped shape the positive thinking and personal growth movement. So Robert Kiyosaki ran a course called Powerful Presentations. And so I went along and I thought I was pretty good at presentations because I was already teaching very successfully in the skincare industry. And I'd grown my audiences from like 6 people to regularly 50 to 70 people in a seminar every couple of months. And people would keep coming back because they just loved the seminar. So I thought I was doing great. And, I'll do this Powerful Presentations anyway, because people said I should do it. I cried for 3 days. It was the most cathartic experience because, I went in probably a little high on myself thinking I'm, top of my game in my industry and, doing all these presentations and whatever. And the very first thing that he wrote up on a flip chart to introduce the seminar was, some people think their information is important. And I'm like, yeah, you know, of course it's important. You know, that's what you're teaching. That's what you're empowering people with. And then he said, you have 15 minutes to prepare a 5-minute speech. And he left the stage. And I was freaking out. I'm like, what am I going to do? Well, I guess I can do one of my skincare speeches or whatever. Anyway, so I got something ready. And then he asked for volunteers to come up on stage and do their little speech demo. And instead of critiquing them on their presentation skills, the main thing that he, or how they spoke, or the, you know, whatever, the main thing that he pulled people up on was their lack of connection with the audience. And then the whole 3 days was all these games that we played where, you know, their experiences and situations that he puts you in. So it reveals your true nature in this situation. And emotional fitness was part of it, and your personal power and how you affect people. It was unbelievable. And so why I cried for 3 days was because I realized I was doing everything wrong in my presentations, because I thought my information was important. Right. And people would ask questions and I just answer questions, and I'd think, well, you know, why don't they get it? This is simple. And I was a little bit judgmental back in those days. And then, you know, the biggest thing that he taught was how to connect. And he said, some people think the information is important, but it's not. It's how you connect with your audience. And connecting one-on-one, or one with 10 or 1,000 people or 20,000 people. How do you do that? And the most powerful place to be is yourself. And as soon as it's an act, as soon as you're trying to be somebody that you're not, you're trying to be braver than you are, you're faking it till you make it, people disconnect from you. They know it's not real. So you have to come from your heart, and you have to connect. And you can only connect if you are connected with yourself. So that was life changing. Yeah. And I was 24 when I did that seminar. It changed my life.
Amazing. Yeah. Amazing. Yeah. That's, yeah. And I mean, that circles right back to what we were talking about, or what you were talking about with the horses and the connection and what you bring to the table. And even from a competitive, I'm going to have to chew on that for a bit, because even from the competitive side, is that it's not the information, is it? It's just, it's the connection. If you have that, then the information, it doesn't matter what it is, right?
Yeah. Like, do we believe in each other?
It doesn't matter if it's jumping or,
Yeah. Well, you know what happened after that seminar? I mean, because I was a wreck through the whole thing, but it was incredibly powerful. I'm amazed I remembered anything, but it struck me so strongly. And about 2 weeks later, I had a seminar to run. And, you know, a lot of people I knew, because they kept coming back every couple of months and learning more. And I did my seminar quite differently without even realizing it. And in the first break, all these people started coming up to me, and no one would come up to me in the break. I'd announce a break and everyone would go have a break. No one would come and talk to me. And I got mobbed in the break. And these people said to me, "You're different." I'm like, "Really?" And they said, "Yeah, what happened? Like, we've been coming to you for years, and this is the first time we felt we could come up and talk to you."
Really?
Had no idea. I was so intimidating because I was confident in delivering my speeches and information. And they respected me for that, but they couldn't connect with me. And when I started to talk to them more and ask them things and stop focusing on my information, the relationship between me and the audience changed. And it happened immediately. And people came up and started asking me questions. And before that, it's like they couldn't talk to me. I had no idea.
Wow.
Yeah, that's huge.
Great.
Huge.
Yeah. Yeah. And when you look back on that experience, like when you came back the second time and you were very different, was it genuine? Was there something now that you can see that you changed, or more you were genuinely paying attention to the people that were there?
I used some of the strategies that I'd learned in that course, which was to give them time to think. It's things I use with horses now. Give them time to think, instead of just throwing information at them. I would ask them questions, or I'd make them part of, like, what do you think about this? And, how would you look at it? And what would happen? Like, if that happened, what would you do about it? So I was much more interactive with the audience rather than a one-way delivery and then saying, so does anybody have any questions? And everyone's like, she just gave me so much, I can't even think. So my pace was different, and I was much more connected to the audience. I would read their faces and see if they were overwhelmed, if they were thinking, if they were, if their expression was confused. And, I know that's an emotion. And so then everything changed. And it was so powerful. I mean, 3 days really shifted me. So even though I learned some strategies, I don't know that I was using them as consciously as just being aware that I was trying to connect with people instead of just stand up there and deliver my sermon,
Yeah. Oh, that's so
huge.
awesome. That's
huge.
Huge, especially like at that.
Day.
Yeah. And at that point, you weren't in the horse industry, right?
No, I had horses. I had 2 horses, and I was trying to do dressage. So I was, having lessons regularly and competing, and not very well. And, horses were my passion, but I just never thought they could be my business, that they'd be my life as well. So, and here I am. It all came together. Yeah. Believe in something enough, it happens.
Believe. And I have one question I'm adding in. It's a very intense one.
Uh-oh.
Are you ready? What do we do about this?
Okay.
What are your top 2 tips for us ladies out with our skin? What do we do?
Oh, the first thing I'm going to say is believe in the oils.
Oh, really?
People are afraid of putting oil on their skin, and they think, oh, I'm going to break out, and this is going to happen, that's going to happen. Mostly breakouts happen from the inside, not from the outside, unless you poison your skin. But fat is very important for your skin. And I learned that. I was very lucky to work with an incredible group in Australia, and they had a very treatment-oriented line that came from France. And they believed in the oils and not using scrubs and treating skin with respect. And so I started working for them when I was 21, and I used their products until I made my own. And I made my own because I can't get their products over here. And people would always ask me, what do you use? And that's what I use. And so I have oil-based cleansers and oil-based treatment oil. Believe in the oils.
Where do we get these oils?
Oh, Linda's Natural Skincare.
Linda's Natural Skincare. Okay, that's what I'm doing when I get off.
Naturalskincare.com. Yeah, but it's great. And I mean, obviously that's what I use, and I've been using it for about 5 years now. And I'm very picky. I'm like the princess and the pea because, I'm trained professional with skin from many years ago. And so I know immediately when something's not right.
I love it. I love that. I always like asking people that are experts in their field what they use for them. Like I asked my acupuncture for my horse, the Chinese medicine guy. I'm like, okay, where do you go for your acupuncture?
There you go.
Like for my hairstylist, where do you get your hair done? Who does your teeth to my dentist? So that was like on my list. I'm like, I have to remember to ask. That's amazing. Well, Linda, this has been so awesome. This is what I'm going to go to for my inspiration. I'm going to go back and listen to this a few times. And you certainly left me with a lot of things I can sit and think on that are going to help me a lot with all the things that are going on in my life right now. And I'm sure that they're going to help a lot of our listeners. So thank you.
Thank you.
So much.
I feel very honored to be interviewed by you, Sinead. You're a big cheese yourself. So thank you very much for thinking of me and giving me this opportunity. And here's to happy horses and happy lives with them.
Cheers. All right, Linda, thanks so much. We'll talk to you soon.
Thank you too.
I really hope you enjoyed that conversation. Before you go, I just want to let you know more about Ride IQ. At its core, Ride IQ gives everyone access to instruction from the best equestrian coaches in the world. It might sound impossible, but with Ride IQ, you get access to the private mobile app that has hundreds of on-demand, listen while you ride audio lessons taught by top riders and coaches in eventing, hunter jumpers, and dressage. Here's how it works. You look through the app and choose a lesson based on your horse or a skill you're working on. There are lessons for green off-the-track thoroughbreds and nervous horses and horses that are behind the leg, as well as lessons that teach every stage of skills like shoulder in or trot lengthenings. Then you tack up and press play, and you have a top coach like Doug Payne or Leslie Law or Gina Smith in your ear guiding you every step of the way. If you enjoyed today's episode, it is always appreciated if you can take a moment to share the podcast with your friends and family and leave a review on your podcast app. The best way to support the podcast is to become a Ride IQ member at ride-iq.com. And when you do, we hope you're excited to see that In Stride is just one of multiple podcast shows on the app, including hack chats, conversations with coaches, and more. And lastly, I wanted to let you know that our friends over at Major League Eventing also have a podcast. And if you enjoyed this show, I think you would also really enjoy their show. Just search for the Major League Eventing podcast in your podcast app and give it a listen.